People of Reddit who have met a celebrity, which one and how was the experience? My dad and I went to a con for my 16th birthday. As we are just walking around, we see this guy in a really good Jack Sparrow costume, so we ask if we can snap a photo and he says of course. So I stand next to him and my dad snaps the photo. A few months after the con, he's talking to one of his co-workers and shows him the photo. Apparently I got a photo unknowingly with Johnny Depp, who's known to go to small cons in full costume. My experience with him was great. He was super kind and chill. Taylor Swift is known pretty well for her ways she meets fans. I was at her 1989 tour. It was my first Taylor concert, and she was performing Love Story, where she just circles the building on her piano. I was so happy in that moment I started to cry. Next thing I know, someone is tapping on my shoulder and I turn around and see her mom. She asked me how I was and I was crying and said I'm doing great. She asked who I was there with and was really shocked when I told her I was by myself. She was essentially mobbed then, with people crowding her to give her stuff to give to Taylor. I thought we had finished talking until she grabbed my hands again and asked if I wanted to meet Taylor. After the concert, a group of us who had all been invited to meet Taylor went backstage. There was a room set up with pizza, soda, themed cookies and a photo booth. They told us no selfies or videos and to wait our turn. Her mom came up to me and asked to take a picture with me, and her aunt came and introduced herself to me and talked. Taylor came out and talked to every single group for ages. She's truly a gem of a person. She wanted to hear everything you had to say and was always asking questions and truly listening. It was my 18th birthday and she wrote a note about it and made everyone sing to me lol. When she heard I came by herself, she made me promise not to leave until she found someone to walk me to my car. She ended up sending her head of security with me. Later I posted my picture on Tumblr. She must have seen it and followed me. 3 years later I went to see her in London and she saw on Tumblr and invited me backstage. She technically wasn't allowed to have people there, so she hid us in the hallway. Talked to me like we were old friends. Incredible through and through. Not a big fan of her music as a 22-year-old man, but damn, from your description she sounds like an incredible human being. My dad wrote a book called Horse Soldiers. It was adapted into a movie called 12 Strong. My family got to go the premiere and Nick and I got to meet Chris Hemsworth, Michael Shannon, and Rob Riggle. I also got to meet Matt Damon because he was also just watching the premiere. My family got to meet Chris and my grandma dropped her bag and Chris picked it up. My grandma looked at him with pure adoration in her eyes. Later, after discovering that Chris Hemsworth's wife is several years older than him, exclaimed, "Now that I know he's into older women, I might have a chance." Grandma is in love. Can you blame her? It's Chris Hemsworth. At Warped Tour 99 I met Eminem before he got famous and I had no idea who he was. I accidentally kicked a rock into the back of his shoe and when he turned around I started to apologize and he immediately began yelling and calling me a bitch. A few minutes later my friends and I were waiting for a band to start on one stage, but the performer on the stage next to us was getting booed by everyone, so we look over and I'm like, oh hey, it's that guy who called me a bitch. Boo-a-roo. Anyway, he got booed off the stage in his hometown of Detroit. A few months later he was all over MTV and music magazines and then everyone knew who he was. Your aunt could have possibly had a chain effect. It hit a nerve in his foot, made his knees weak, palms spaghetti, vomit on his sweater. Spaghetti spaghetti. I met Ashton Kutcher and Emma Moore when they were married, when they rented a nearby house for the Super Bowl in town. I was super young and a bunch of us rode our bikes to see them. He made a point of walking out to hug and take pictures with everyone and was all around a super charming guy. She was a little more standoffish but still sweet. He drove around the neighborhood a few times the days before and would always smile and wave to everyone. Ashton Kutcher always sounds like such a great guy when people tell stories. I met Tom Holland. I was his Uber driver. I geeked out for a second. Initially, he kind of popped out of nowhere. Even if it was a non-celebrity, I would have been startled. But since it was him, I was startled and blurred out, "You're Spider-Man," like a fucking idiot. He responded with, "No I'm not," and proceeded to ask about my day. Super nice. We talked for a bit. And the rest of the ride we both enjoyed our own music. He put his AirPods in and I with my car speakers. Luckily, I didn't freak him out too much, because he left a nice tip through the app. No I'm not, haha Peter. Oing Pete, your Uber is awesome. I'm stuff. Uber driver. OMG. No. I worked at a coffee shop when I was younger. A Starbucks inside a gigantic Chapters store. Robin Williams came in while I was working and I took his order and made his coffee. I was completely starstruck. He was my favorite movie star when I was a kid. I didn't have much of an interaction with him. He was courteous, but just after a coffee and something to read. What really struck me was that there were maybe 60 or 70 other people getting coffee or looking at books, and every single one of them was staring at him the entire time he was there. People talk about the price of fame, and it always sounded like horseshit to me, but after that I totally believe it. Imagine never being able to go and do anything without everyone who saw you knowing who you were, and, for them, any interaction you have becomes a story they remember. It's F up. I met Dave Chappelle a few years ago. Got to talk to him for about 20 minutes. He was really down to earth, and just naturally funny and enjoyable to speak with. And he smoked a whole pack of cigarettes during these 20 minutes. Can confirm. Met him back in the early 2000s at the Comedy Cellar in Nick. Twice. Also spoke to him for about 20 minutes each time. At a hotel I worked at as a valet I got to meet Post Malone, who was dining at the steakhouse connected to hotel. He pulled up in his custom Rolls Royce with a white Suburban in tow with his guests and security. The coolest part of this story other than being able to drive his car was when he came outside for a smoke. He was by himself and we got to small talk for a good 5 minutes. The convo ranged from where we both grew up to what we like to do in our free time. He was a really cool down to earth guy. P.S. Before anyone asks, no, he did not smell. Met Elton John backstage once. He was so business-like that it was what I imagine it's like to meet the Queen. We were lucky enough to get backstage friends of Elton instead of friends of the band or press. So we had a lovely waiting room with free booze and snacks. We waited about 30 minutes till he was ready for us. Step 1. Stand in a line and shake hands with an individual comment for each person. Step 2. Ask for cameras and hand them to assistant. Step 3. He puts his chubby arms around you and smiles for the photo. Assistant takes like 3 photos per camera. Step 4. He thanks you for coming and tells you to enjoy the show. Total time. 1 minute for a group of 8. 25% show, 75% business. This makes me sad. I love Elton's music, but I've heard a lot of stories that make him sound like a bit of a dick. In interviews, he always comes across as down to earth, but my girlfriend's parents saw him live a few years ago and they said they just didn't enjoy it at all because he just didn't seem to care. They said he had pretty much no interaction with the crowd. Just walked on, did his bit and walked off. People weren't even allowed to dance in the crowd, and if they did, security would come over and tell them to sit down. I just hope these experiences are few and far between. I'd like to think he's a good guy. I met Simon Pegg when I was working as a cashier at Borders. I've told this story before, but it was like a Tuesday in the afternoon and the place was empty. He came up to me with some stationery and I started ringing him up. The entire time I was thinking he looked so much like him, but I didn't think it was him since I wasn't in the UK and as far as I knew he wasn't filming a movie in Chicago, so it was a pretty quiet transaction. After it was done and I was handing him his bag with his stuff, I jokingly said, "Has anyone told you that you look like the guy from Shaun of the Dead?" He replied, "I am the guy from Shaun of the Dead." It's a relief to hear that Simon Pegg isn't an a-hole. Thank you for watching, and like if you enjoyed. Remember to subscribe for daily Reddit videos.